So we're going to continue building here. That's what we're doing. We're building. Okay. And I'm going to emphasize once again, and I really, this is something that I mean very seriously, that there is information and there's transformation. And we don't, often we don't really need breakthrough, new, brilliant ideas that no one ever thought of before in order to have transformation in our life. What we really need to have transformation is taking nuggets of information and actually personalizing it. And the way we do that is very simple, that when you hear an idea, you always ask yourself, how does this look in my life? Now, if you're very Jewish, you're probably thinking, I hope so-and-so is listening. Right? That may be very Jewish, but it's not very transformational. Transformational is, how does this look in my life, and how can I introduce this in my life if it's not there in a very vibrant way? Okay, so there's going to be a major key nugget tonight. A major key nugget. The key nugget is not so much informational, although it will be that too, and it may be new to you. But even if it's not new to you, it will offer you enormous transformation. In fact, I'm going to suggest that the nugget of tonight's class is going to be threatening. Okay? Now, in a very subtle way, But I'm saying that to you so that you should know that if in any way you're resisting the idea, it's probably because you're feeling threatened by it. And if you're feeling threatened by it, you're probably just a normal human being. That's how I know that we're threatened by it, because I'm also threatened by it. Okay. But so that's just to, you'll look out for when you're feeling that way, and you'll know we're hitting the nugget. We're going to begin. So to make or not to make meaning. We're going to be discussing the traditional way to seek meaning, a lot of which we actually discussed last week, which were very traditional ways of seeking meaning. And then we're going to discuss an entirely different way of seeking meaning, which really can be the highway to meaning, right? Not the state road, 25 miles per hour, but the highway to meaning. But it's a little bit out of the box from the way people normally think, and it requires us not to be threatened, but to look at it and say, hey, what can I do with this? That's where we're going tonight. And we're going to start, if you have your student book on page 36, we have an exercise. This is what we're going to start with. An exercise. Examine the objects in these two images. Can you figure out their functions? Okay, now these two objects are not related in any way to each other. They may look somewhat similar, but they're not related. And can anyone guess what their purposes are? Anyone want to suggest the purpose of one of them? A hole puncher. Okay, a hole puncher. Okay, that's very likely. Any other takes? Well, that's the one to the right or to the left? What's that? The right, which image? The one on the right or the left? And were you, Robin, you were talking about the one on the right or on the left? On the right. Okay, great. Who else? I saw a hand. Yes. The one on the right is an olive pitter. Very nice. You were in Israel recently? Very good. One more. Someone else. Give me something. Yes. Okay, the one on the left, a candle holder. Very good. Okay. Excellent. Fantastic. We just finished part 1 of tonight's lesson. Beautiful. We're going to get back to this later. Okay, we're going to get back to this later. The reason why we asked it, it's not a question of, it's not a right or wrong question. It was just to get some creativity, and we're going to get back to it to demonstrate a point that we want to demonstrate. We're now going to revisit Ecclesiastes. You remember Ecclesiastes? The book that the last final book that King Solomon wrote in his life. And before we get back to it, I want to ask you a question. If, let's say, that life doesn't have meaning, right? There are people who don't believe that life has meaning, right? Life is just random. So let's just suppose that for a second, even though we don't believe that. Let's suppose that life doesn't have meaning. will life be any easier? Okay, well, I heard a bunch of no's. Okay, very good. I have to share a classic with you, because you have to know the classics, right? You have to know the classics. So this is a classic. A classic is this Jewish guy, Maishala. Maishala sounds Jewish. So Maishala, he did some business with Antonio. You know, Antonio from Queens. So he's doing some business with Antonio. They're good business partners. And one day Antonio says, hey, Maishala, what goes on in your synagogue? He says, why don't you come? You'll be able to see for yourself. So he comes. Antonio sits next to Maishala, and they're sitting down in the synagogue, and things are happening. You know, Antonio has no idea what's going on, right? So he tells him, you know, who's that guy standing in the front? He keeps on saying phrases. Oh, he's the chazan. He's the leader, right? He's the cantor. Then someone gets up and starts moving to the front of the room. He says, where's he going? He's going to open the ark. That's the ark. They open up the ark. What are those things in the ark? It's the Torah. Take it out. The reader. He's the reader. They raise the Torah. He explains everything. And then it comes to the rabbis. The rabbi gets up. Where's the rabbi going? To give a sermon. Very nice. And then the rabbi takes out a watch and puts it on the lectern. And the man asks, and Antonio says to Maishala, what's the rabbi doing with his watch? What's the meaning of that? And Maishala says, if you know how long this rabbi speaks, there's absolutely no meaning to that. So, you know, there are people who go through life and they feel that there's no meaning, and they behave in a certain manner. Anyone here remember? I think it was pronounced YOLO. Yeah, anyone know what that stands for? You only live once. You only live once. What is the message of that statement? You only live once. What's the point of that? To say you only live once, time's moving on, right? Grab every opportunity to have a blast, right? Eat, drink, and be merry for tomorrow. Yeah, right? That's a way of living, and that is not a very meaningful way of living, but that's a way of living, and that's a lot of people. That was very popular. YOLO was very popular maybe 20 years ago. You ever hear of the bucket list? Did you ever think of what the bucket is? What's up with the bucket list? Why a bucket, right? Before I kick the bucket, I want to get all of these things done. Isn't that very inspiring, right? So, but that's also, let's squeeze it all in, right? Because, which is not coming from a very meaningful place. Let's just live it up. Now, fascinatingly, King Solomon, whether he actually did this or not, it would be hard for me personally to believe that he actually did this, but he writes about it as if he did it. He writes that he lived this. He writes that he lived this way because he was searching for meanings. He was trying all different types of things, you know, and cashing in on things to see what's going to make his life a little better. So we're going to go to text 1a. That's on page 38. And we're going to read this these astounding verses that King Solomon wrote.
I amassed great wealth. I built homes, planted vineyards. I designed gardens and orchards filled with every kind of fruit tree. I made reservoirs to water entire groves of trees. I acquired male and female servants and had more cattle, herds, and flocks than anyone before me in Jerusalem. I piled up silver and gold and the treasures of kings and provinces. I brought in male and female singers and every luxury people could desire, chests and chests of it. I became wealthier than anyone who came before me in Jerusalem, and I still had my wisdom. I didn't hold back from anything my eyes wanted. I didn't deny myself any pleasure. I took joy in everything I achieved, but in the end, that joy was all that I really got from it. Then I looked back at all I had worked for, everything I had built and gained, and it was all pointless, just chasing the wind, nothing truly lasting under the sun.
Well, what a conclusion, right? So that's King Solomon, the wisest man of all time's conclusion about things. That's not going to be his ultimate conclusion. That's his conclusion in, just a second, in chapter 2 at least, right? In chapter 2 of his book. Psychologists call this the hedonic treadmill, right? A hedonist is someone who's pursuing all forms of pleasure, and you're on this treadmill of getting this thing, getting that thing, having this experience, having that experience, trying this, trying that. I once went on a vacation with my wife to a place which is a little bit outside of our norm. Okay, it's not very impressive or exotic for most of you. I know from Facebook, but but for us it was like a little bit, out there, and I wanted to experience it. And when we were done, I told Rosie, we never have to go back again. It's like we went, saw it, very nice. It was really very nice. It was very nice and everything, but done. Like, I have no need for that, right? It's like over and done with. And that's the hedonic treadmill, is that, okay, you get the new car and it's so exciting and everyone comments on it. And then a month later, it's just the car that takes you from one place to the other. I mean, it has some perks and this and that, but whatever it is, right? That's sort of what King Solomon is describing, that this boost that we get, this excitement that we get, we feel like maybe that's meaning. But then we realize it's not meaning, right? Because we're right back to where we started. And the reason why we are is because of what they call hedonic adaptation, which is we adapt. We suddenly adapt to what we have and everything. And that this is life, right? Or like my good friend Mike Hogan once told me, of blessed memory, that his accountant told him, no matter how much money you make, you never have money to save. Why? Because when you make another 50, your budget somehow just climbs up to another 50, right? Unless you have a lot of discipline, right? And that's this idea that just chasing things, King Solomon has determined, really does not give us meaning in any way, shape, or form. And we are always going to come leveling out at some point once again. It's probably going to be very quickly. And we even adapt in a certain respect to certain meaningful things in life as well, right? Like when I started teaching JLI classes, we maybe had 15 people, I think, right? And then we had classes that were, similar to this size. And it was like the first time was thrilling, right? And then you sort of get used to it. So it's not so thrilling, right? It is thrilling, by the way. The good thing about this is there's so much energy when people come together that even when you can't simply adapt to it. But in like many things, we just get accustomed to, which is really the point that I'm trying to bring out. And so what does Solomon do over here? He said, okay, we're going to leave all the stuff and we're going to go to wisdom, to more spiritual things. And that's what we have in text number 1b. And this may surprise you as well. Let's read text 1b.
I turned my thoughts to understanding wisdom and also madness and foolishness. I saw that wisdom was better than foolishness, just as light is better than darkness. A wise person sees where they are going, but a fool stumbles in the dark. But I also realized that the same fate awaits them both. So I thought, if I'll end up just like the fool, what's the point of being wise? And I saw that too is meaningless, because neither the wise nor the foolish are remembered for long. In time, both are forgotten. In the end, the wise person dies just like the fool. That made me hate life. Everything happening under the sun seemed so pointless, just chasing the wind.
Who came here for inspiration tonight? We're going to get there. We're going to get there. Because King Solomon doesn't end here. He doesn't end here. This is all part of his process. And this is already, the same chapter. This is all part of his process of actually giving us tremendous wisdom, which we're going to get to at the very end of the class. But it's really remarkable, because if we know who King Solomon was and we understand that he's expressing these feelings, it's quite shocking. So King Solomon reigned for 40 years. He was the most powerful king, most powerful Jewish king. And during his reign, he had the greatest power, not only over Israel, but in the world. So he was revered by kings and queens throughout the world who would come and bring him presents. And he brought unprecedented peace to the land of Israel when he during his kingship. He fortified the infrastructure, created new trade routes, and the military of the land of Israel. The military was mighty, although he didn't need to use it. His reign was an entire reign of peace, unlike his father, King David. Well, he was picking up on the heels of his father's wars, and then at that time there was peace. And he composed thousands of proverbs and songs. So with everything else running a country and being the world leader, he also was able to focus, tried Proverbs, Song of Songs, and other books. And he constructed, this is his biggest achievement, he constructed the first holy temple, which was a monumental project. I made believe I was managing the building of a mikveh, 2,000 square feet, right? And I'm like, I will never do a building project again. No construction ever again. The temple was enormous. I mean, I don't know. I didn't figure out the dimensions before class, but it was enormous, and the height. And in those days where they didn't have the technology we have, right? Stone, huge stones, tons and tons of weight, and that's what he accomplished. And yet, what was he missing? Something was missing that he just did. He just felt that he lacked meaning. And just to add to the inspiration, so so just to add to the inspiration, you probably heard of an author. See, last week, right? Last week we discussed growth, that people need to grow constantly as people, right? We need to be productive. We need to be doing things which are productive, right? It's a very big word I use all the time. Is it productive or not? That's a very good way to decide whether you should be doing things. Simple. Is it productive? Or what is the productive way to do it? Right? And then are you giving? Are you all giving? Are you providing for others? And then relationships. Are you in relationships with all of these things? Add meaning universally, right? Now, I'm going to guess that most, if not all of us in this room are active in all four areas. And if you're active in all four areas, yet you all came back to class tonight, right? Which means that you're still saying, but there's got to be more. There's got to be more meaning than just that. And you're 100% correct, right? So this was a good start, but is there something more? There definitely is. So the famous author, Russian author Leo Tolstoy, writes a frightening thing. And there are many, many people who have gone through similar experiences to him. Yeah, he was obviously a thinker, right? He was a very creative person. And he wrote a book called Confession. And in it, towards the beginning of his book, he writes something that's quite scary. Let's read text number 3, but we're worth reading. This is our last segment of deep inspiration for tonight. But let's read it. Go ahead.
Okay. 5 years ago, something very strange began to happen to me. At first, I experienced moments of perplexity and arrest of life. As sort of I didn't know what to do, how to live, and I felt lost and became dejected. But this passed, and I went on living as before. Then this moment of perplexity began to occur oftener and oftener, and always in the same form. They were always expressed by the question, what is it for? What does it lead to? I understood that it was no casual in this position, but something very important, and if this question constantly repeated themselves, they would have to be answered, and I tried to answer them. The question seemed such stupid, simple, childish question, but as soon as I touched them and tried to solve them, I at once became convinced that they are not childish and stupid, but most important and profound of life question. And that try as I would, I could not solve them. Before occupying myself with my Samara estate, the education of my son, or the writing of a book, I had to know why I was doing it. As long as I did not know why, I could do nothing and could the sort of estate management, which greatly occupied me at that time, the question would suddenly occur to me. Well, you have 6,000 this, this,
Desiatinas. It's a Russian word, no?
no.
Oh, I guess not. I was trying to sound like I know Russian.
Desiatinas, right, of land in Samara government with 300 horses. And what next? And I was quite disconcerted and did not know what to think. Or when considering my plans for the education of my children, I would say to myself, what for? Or when thinking of this fame my work would bring me, I said to myself, very well, you will be more famous than Gogol or Pushkin or Shakespeare or Molière or than all the writers at in the world. And what of it? And I could find no reply at all.
Excellent. Just give me 1 second. Okay. Just helping with the Zoom, there was a little slight echo. Okay, very good. Okay, fantastic. So, and Tolstoy's really thinking like a healthy, normal person. He's trying to find what the meaning in life is, and life can be terribly debilitating, especially for a person who thinks a lot, if they cannot find meaning. So we're going to step now into a tremendous insight that the Torah gives us on how to find meaning, which is radically different, I would say, than the conventional ways. And I'm going to spell it out this way because you may have heard it regarding this as well. Okay. And that is many people, in addition to seeking meaning, I would say most people seek happiness. And they try and figure out, some people will even interchange the two. Happiness, meaning, right? They're trying to find something that's going to be give them fulfillment. And when we look for happiness, there's a very big irony in seeking happiness, which I'm not going to elaborate too much on because it's a sidetrack to this. It's going to be a side path to this class, but it's really the same thing with meaning, and that is that the experience of happiness is always a byproduct of living a certain way. Happiness is not something you can go to in the supermarket and take off of the shelf. So you can't actually go and search for happiness, because in searching for happiness, you're sabotaging the very ability to get it. Because the way we get happiness is a byproduct of doing other things. Okay, what that is a good question, which we can discuss at a different time. Meaning is the exact same way. When we directly look for meaning and we say, I'm going to do this to bring meaning into my life, I'm going to do that to bring meaning into my life, we are actually sabotaging and limiting the possibility for us to experience profound meaning. Okay, so we can have forms of meaning, but it's not going to be something which will be as significant as what we are looking for after already being people who grow and are productive and are giving and are in relationships. That's really the key point I want you to realize tonight. Okay? And yes, there is. All right. If anyone could just turn it off, whatever it is. Okay. I'm trying to move on. It's at some point it's going to go. It's going to stop. Okay. I don't know. No one knows who it is. So the very search for meaning can be the biggest obstacle to finding meaning. That's what I want to convey. The very search for meaning. If we're not searching for meaning properly, then we are sabotaging exactly what we want in the way we're trying to get it. And the way we're going to make this distinction is by understanding that there is subjective meaning and there is objective meaning. Subjective meaning and objective meaning. Okay. Subjective meaning is meaning that are things that I am looking for that will make me feel as if I have meaning. It's not objectively meaningful, but it makes me feel as if I have meaning now. That is the traditional classic form of meaning that people search for and find. The problem with subjective meaning is that just like we wax and wane, and our moods go up and down, and our feelings about things change, and we go through cycles in life. If something gives me meaning now, it may not, and very likely will not give me meaning in 5 years from now. And that's why it's not a satisfying form of meaning. Objective meaning is something that is objectively meaningful outside of me. Okay, so it is objectively meaningful. And then I engage with that. And when I engage with that, I have something which is eternally meaningful, because its meaning is not dependent on me. Its meaning is independent of me. And we'll understand this, as we speak it out more and more. Have you ever had something in your life that was ever meaningful that is no longer meaningful? Of course. I'm getting from the back. I'm right. Of course. Thank you for the strong support. Right? Yeah, absolutely. Right. So if someone is, if anyone who's just lived, we'll say, a few years of life, and you're still young, you're 60. You're still young, right? You're only halfway through life. You're just beginning, right? The things that gave you meaning at 40 do not give you meaning at 60. And I didn't hit 60 yet, but I know that for a fact, right? I have no question, because I know that from 40 to 50, right? I know that from 30 to 40. Like, we all know that, right? And because those things are not objectively meaningful things, they are subjectively meaningful things. And in our desperation to find meaning, we grab on things. We get very excited about them. And it's a little bit disappointing. We may not acknowledge it to anybody when we realize that they're really not that meaningful. It may be a year later. It may be right at the end of the vacation, right? After all that money, right? Whatever it is, doesn't make a difference what it is. But we all know this. So some people say, to have a meaningful life, I'm going to engage in, intellectual ideas. I'm going to read books. I'm going to acquire knowledge. Some people dive deep into protecting the environment. Other people, I'm going to help anyone that needs any help. I'm going to help them, right? Support Israel. All of these things are wonderful things, right? The question is, are they objectively meaningful, or are they subjectively meaningful? So this is the wild idea for tonight. For lesson number 2, the wild idea is perhaps searching for meaning is not the way to find meaning. And I know you all came to take this course to search for meaning. I'm just telling you, it's all up. The search is up. And that's what I'm telling you, right? Let's go back to 2,375 years ago. Okay, you know what happened 2,375 years ago? It was a major moment in Jewish history, a major event in Jewish history. We even have a holiday that is all about this event that happened. And it's one of the happiest days on the Jewish calendar, arguably the happiest. Anyone know which holiday I'm talking about? It's a one-day holiday. Purim. There you go. Okay, Jews are in Israel, right? We get the first temple. The first temple gets destroyed. Jews go into exile for 70 years. Towards the end of that exile, the very end of that exile, there's a king of Persia who rises to kingdom, which is a shocking thing. Shocking thing. Because this guy was a drunk, he was a deadbeat, and because he married the right woman, he ends up, by the name of Vashti, he ends up becoming king. and he rules over pretty much the entire world, 127 provinces. Okay, he calls for his wife to do something which was something even his wife wouldn't do, which was quite shocking because they were the most inappropriate and immoral people. So what does he do? He's a king. What do kings do? Off with your head. And he kills his wife. Isn't that wonderful? Right? And then he looks for a new queen. And you may know the story. Every beautiful girl in the country has to present themselves. And one of those people was none other than, like, as they say, you can't make this stuff up, right? You can't make this stuff up. The girl who is the cousin of the leader of the Jewish people by the name of Mordechai, right? The leader of the Jewish people's name is Mordechai, and his cousin is a girl by the name of Esther, has to show up. She doesn't do anything to beautify herself, right? No, right? And the king chooses her. Right? You know why you can't make this stuff up? Because only God can make this stuff up. That's why. That's the only way these wild stories happen. And by the way, these stories are happening right now also. Right? But right, all the time. We're seeing these things happening all the time. So Esther becomes queen, and Mordechai tells Esther, do not tell anyone that you're Jewish. Right? Now, Mordechai was a very proud Jew. He wasn't hiding the Jewishness. Right? But he told her, don't tell anyone that you're Jewish. So she's the queen. No one knows that she's Jewish. Haman comes along. Haman pays off the king with an enormous amount of money in order to have a decree written to annihilate all the Jews. Part of the reason why he vehemently hates the Jews is because when he comes into the courtyard of the palace, everyone bows down to him except for one person, Mordechai, right? And he hates Mordechai with a venom. And so he's going to destroy the entire Jewish people. He gets the decree signed. And once it's signed, the Jews are going to be annihilated in 1 year's time. Mordechai sends a message to his cousin. And what's the message he sends to his cousin? Let's read text 4a. He couldn't see her, so he sends a message with a man by the name of Hasach or Hatach. Okay, text 4a. Whoever has the microphone.
Mordechai gave Hatash a copy of the written decree that had been circulated in Shushan, instructing him to show it to Esther and to urge her to go before the king, to plead with him and beg for the lives of her people. Hatash went and delivered Mordechai's message to Esther. Esther then said to Hatash and instructed him to relay her words to Mordechai. All the king's servants and the people of the king's province know that anyone, man or woman, who enters the king's inner court without being summoned is subject to death unless the king extends his golden scepter, granting permission to live. And I have not been summoned to the king in 30 days. Esther's message was conveyed to Mordechai. Mordechai sent back this reply to Esther. Don't imagine that you, of all the Jews, will escape just because you're in the palace. If you remain silent at this moment, relief and deliverance will come for the Jews from another source, but you and your father's house will perish.
Okay. What tactic is Mordechai using to convince Esther to go to the king? That if you don't go to the king, right? Now, Esther's terrified because if she goes to, she doesn't know if the king will stick out his scepter and whether she's going to die or not. So Mordechai says, don't imagine that the Jews will be killed, but you're the queen, so you're going to be fine. Actually, he says, if you remain silent, God takes care of the Jews. Jews are going to be fine, right? The question is going to happen through you or not. But if it doesn't happen through you, God will take care of the Jews. But you and your father's house will perish. That's what he says, right? So what tactic is he using to get Esther to do something? Very simple. He's saying if you want to live, it would be advisable that you go to the king. Because this way you might live. If you don't go to the king, you're definitely going to die. If you do go to the king and he extends his scepter, then you will live, right? So if Esther believes Mordechai, which she does, right? So then she's going to go to the king. Why? She wants to live, right? She wants to live. All good, right? All good, very good. So, however, Mordechai doesn't stop there. Mordechai doesn't stop there. That's the introduction, okay? Mordechai then says, gives a second reason why she should go to the king. And this second reason is very different than the first reason. Let's pay attention to the second reason, which is text 4b.
And who knows, perhaps you became queen for just such a time as this.
Okay. So in the first argument or point that he makes to Esther, he says, go, you know why it'll be beneficial for you. We call that subjective meaning. It will be meaningful for you to go because it will be good for you. You're going to save your life. But now he switches and he says, doesn't switch, but he adds, and who knows, perhaps you became queen for just a time as this. Why did God choose Esther, a fine Jewish woman who wants to have nothing to do with a heathen and a lowlife like Achashverosh? Why would God put her into a position to be the queen? A forced marriage is essentially what it was with the queen of this man. So Mordechai says, who knows, perhaps you became queen for just a time as this, meaning that God set all of this up for this moment, for you to walk into the king's throne room and tell him you're a Jew and you need to speak to him because Haman wants to destroy your people. What do we call that reasoning? Objective meaning. This is the purpose of your position. It's not because it's going to get you anything, but it's because this is the whole reason why you're queen, right? And it's deeply meaningful when we fulfill the entire purpose of why we were put in the position. Like there's some people that get put into a position and, it's like, someone's given a powerful position and then when it gets hot in the kitchen, they go running, right? But if someone is put in a position and it's hot in the kitchen and they stand through it, that's why they are there. There is nothing more meaningful that a person can do in their life than actually live up to the entire purpose of why they are there. And that's the second reason that Mordechai is telling Esther. Now, Mordechai could have said, how are you going to live with yourself, knowing that all of your people died and you lived? Right? Sound like something we would say? Yeah, right? Dump some good, juicy, heavy Jewish guilt. That's the way you go. How meaningful would it be to save your people? You can go on the positive, okay? Not guilt, right? So how meaningful would it be if you would save your people? That would be amazing, right? That is still subjective. It is objective only when we are called to a calling. We know this is our calling in this moment, and we step up simply to be the person fulfilling my purpose in this moment. And here's the fascinating thing. Esther responds. What does Esther respond? Listen to her response, and you tell me which of the two arguments she is accepting. Let's go to text 4c.
Esther said the reply to Mordecai, go gather all the Jews who are found in Shushan and fast for me. Do not eat and do not drink for 3 days, night and day. I too, along with my maidens, will fast likewise. And then I will go to the king, though it is against the law, and if I perish, I perish.
So I want to ask you something. Would you say that this was a very good cost-benefit analysis? She said, well, let me think about this. What would be best, right? And she says, make sure everyone fasts, because if I perish, I perish, right? Basically, I'm putting my whole life on the line for this. That's not a cost-benefit analysis. That's investing your entire existence in this mission because I know that this is why I'm here right now. That's what she's saying, which means that she's responding to the second statement of Mordechai. Who knows, perhaps you became queen for just a time as this. That means Esther teaches us what it means to live a meaningful life. And that is to ask ourselves, what is my purpose? Now, I know that's a major question. I know it's a major question. We're not answering that question tonight. We're going to answer that question next week, of course, right? Right. So we're going to start tackling that actually next week. But tonight we just want to understand what brings a person meaning. It's not to look for something that will give me meaning. It's actually to step into what God wants from me. Why was I put here? Why was this set up this way? Microphone still working? Yeah, okay. And when we do that, we have a power within us which is just unbelievable. Really, we have a power within us which is unbelievable. And I would suppose that all of us have had these experiences in life. Some of us may have it more frequently, less frequently. Maybe it's isolated moments, but just moments when you knew this is what I'm supposed to be doing now. And it's not something that's about me, and it's not gaining something for me. It's just something that I am meant to be doing right now in this moment. Right? Like we find ourselves randomly somewhere where something happens and we just get up and we take charge. Right? That would be one of many, many types of examples. That's just one way you see it, where you see that very blatantly. And this is the difference between subjective meaning and objective meaning. And another way of looking at this is, if you go to figure 2.1, it's a very important way to look at it, is, did my existence precede my meaning and my purpose? Or does my existence follow my meaning and my purpose? And let me explain that, because that may need some more elaboration. If you look at figure 2.1, okay, it's on page 48. So you see, person before meaning. I happen to exist. I came into the world, right? I didn't choose to, right? Let me live a meaningful life. Well, here I am. I want to enjoy life. I want it to be a meaningful life. I'm a good person. I want it to be a meaningful life. I want to introduce some meaning into my life. This is classic. Okay, so I'm here. I'm living life. It feels empty. I want it to be meaningful. And if you just go just below that, something is needed. I need something meaningful. I am introduced to fill that need. So now I'm introduced to something to fill that need. So I have this need, this emptiness. I'm going to find something to fill it. Okay? That is the classic way of understanding meaning. And then we just search for things that are going to make me feel like I'm purposeful, I'm meaningful, etc. And then another way is, wait, am I getting this right or I'm getting this wrong here? 1 second. I'm sorry. I went the wrong way. Did I? I'm confused about this chart. Yeah. So the top. Let's go from left to right. So I happen to exist. Let me live a meaningful life. Arbitrary. We can attribute any meaning to life. Anything that will give me meaning is going to be perfect for life. But when the sequence is purpose preceded my meaning, which is now we're on the bottom left. Something is needed. Something is needed. So I was brought into this world to fulfill that need, which means that my purpose preceded me. Something is needed to be accomplished in this world. And therefore, in 1973, God sent my soul into this world. He didn't send it in 1975. He didn't send it in 1941. He sent it in 1973 because I have a distinct role during the years that I am living, that God needs me to fulfill. So something is needed before I even showed up. And now here I am. I'm not just looking for something to make me feel meaningful. It's inherent. Go to the right. There is an objective purpose to life. When I can tap into that objective purpose to life, I will be so filled with meaning, I will have no doubt that I am living the purpose of my life. Next week, we're going to begin doing that. It's all a hook. There's a whole game. Yeah. No, but really, right? But first, we have to understand this really well. So we have to understand there's a difference between me being here and now I'm going to create meaning, invent meaning, right? Versus there is a mission that needs to be fulfilled and I was put here to fulfill that mission, but I just need to figure out what that mission is. Okay? And I'm not saying that's easy to do, but I am saying that that is the most meaningful thing a person can do. Yeah. Yes, I am saying that. I'm saying that Let me say it in different words. I'm saying that you were put here by design for a purpose. By God. By God. Exactly. That's correct. That is correct. You don't get to choose it either. Yeah, you don't get to choose. Right? Did you get to choose your talents? Your level of intelligence? Almost everything about you didn't get to choose, actually. What? You know why? But you know why? You know why you didn't get to choose all those things? They were by design to fit perfectly for your purpose that God has set out for you to accomplish. It's not, it's prearranged. What we do with it is our free choice. Our free choice is how we respond to things. There's action and reaction, right? As Viktor Frankl said, right? There's a space. And what we do in that space, how we react, is really where our power is. So that's what it is. Yeah. 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 Yes. Parents. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Andrea. Thank you for that example. I love that example because this is an excellent example. An excellent example. You know, it's an excellent example also because it moves us a little bit away from our own personal life, although it's still quite personal. Let me say this. One of the most important things that every parent should embrace, which is not easy to embrace, but one of the most important things for a parent to embrace if we want our children to thrive is to stop living our lives through them, but to let them be who they are. And I will say all the time, people ask me, so you want your kids to be rabbis? People ask me that all the time. So you want your kids to be rabbis? And my answer is always the same. No, I don't want them to be rabbis. I want them to be them. And if them is being a rabbi, then they should be a rabbi. And if them is being whatever else, you could pick anything else, then that's what they should be. I want them to be who God made them to be. To be what? 100%. And that, correct. And to be a parent means to help my children blossom so that all that God invested in them, they will be able to use in the most productive way possible. So it's giving them that guidance, but not instructing them that they should specifically do this, because then you're going to make enough money and then you won't have to worry, and then this and then that, which may not be true to them. So if it's something that's true to them, the great numbers and you tell them to be an accountant, fantastic. But if that's not the case, then that's not being fair to them. We're going to end the conversation here because we don't have time for a parenting conversation. There is purpose in being a parent. We're not going to have a whole parenting conversation. I'm happy to discuss it after the class. Yeah, but the main point is that we have to help people. It's not only our children, but to help people be who they are, and give them the full support in doing that without judgment of what they should be. They should only be who they are. Correct. Correct. Okay. Yes. And then we're going to move on. Go ahead. Uh-huh. I think I do. Actually, I know. If that makes you more comfortable, I'll give you confidence. I know that I'm supposed to be here right now teaching you. And I don't have any doubt that God wants me to do anything else. Yeah, that's the process of life. And that's how we bring out from within ourselves everything that we have. That's process. And by the way, there's a lot more I'll discover that I think I have it all figured out now, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, great question. So I'm going to answer you briefly. This is a big conversation, but I'm going to answer you briefly. Okay. The purpose is that God wants us to go through the process on our own so that we own who we are. Because whenever you give a kid a free ride, you ruin them for life. They have to go through the process themselves. And God wants every one of us to go through the process. And that's how we rectify this world, by going through that process. And I know as well as you that that process is not pleasant, right? And we all have our stories, our history. I don't want to make it dramatic, our traumas or whatever it is that we've all had, right? And we may still have, right? We all have that stuff. That's all a part of our process. That's the reason why God wants to go through it. He doesn't want to give it to us on a silver platter. That would defeat the entire purpose of creation. But we'll just, that's in short the answer, and we can elaborate on it at a different time. Okay. What, my answer is convenient? Maybe. Sandra, should we take this all the way? Maybe your reaction to my comment is convenient. But anyway, I hear you. It needs more time. There's like, we could do that's a whole course in and of itself. But I'm giving to you in a nugget, and I understand I'm not answering all the questions. I just want you to know genuinely it's not coming. I'm not trying to give you a quick answer to move away. What I just said is actually a very deep and profound, and it can be explained on very, very deep levels. Okay. So I'm not just being flippant. It may feel that way, but I'm not. Okay. So I just want you to know that. Okay. So let's go back to our opening exercise. Okay. Just make sure we're okay. When we go back to our opening exercise, right? So we asked this question, what are these two things? So factually, it really doesn't make a difference, what anyone answered in that. It wasn't a question of right or wrong. But if you want to know factually, this actually is a pitter. So it helps to go to Israel, right? But it's a pitter. That's what it is. Okay. And you punch it and it pushes out the pit. Wonderful. Okay. This, this thing on the random chances, it's an AI production that has absolutely no inherent meaning. It's just AI was asked to create an image of some interesting tool, and it has no specific purpose. Now we came up with some purposes, right? And you could use it for those things. You can hang your hat on it, right? What was the other one? There was another good one we had. What did you say? Oh yeah, candle holder. It looks like that to me, right? You put a tea light or something like that on it, right? You can hold like that. So it's a really cool one too, right? But what we're doing is, what are we doing? We're assigning meaning to it. It is not its meaning. It's just, what can we do with this? Someone gave me this present. I have no idea what to do with it. We'll use it as a candle holder, right? I'll use it to hang my hat. Wonderful. It's assigning meaning, but it's not inherent meaning, right? But when you have a tool that was made by design for a certain purpose and you're using it for that purpose, then it is inherent meaning. And this is the point, that when we know something is made by design, what do we want to do? We want to find out the creator's intention and purpose in their making of this. When it's without purpose, arbitrary meanings, nothing wrong with that, but they're not inherent meanings. They're not deeply meaningful. If we randomly exist, right, which of course, I don't believe, right? And I would suppose that most, if not all of us in this room don't believe. So if we randomly exist, then we have to invent our meaning. I came into the world, right? My parents decided to have another child, and here I am. And okay, how am I going to make the best of this? So YOLO makes sense, right? Bucket list makes sense. All of that makes sense because I'm just trying to either have fun, distraction, or create some type of meaning. And some of that meaning may be beautiful things. But if we exist by design, we do not create our meaning. What do? We discover it. Huge difference. We don't have to invent anything here. We only need to discover. Now, I acknowledge that very often we feel, but how in the world do you discover that? Right? I know that. And that's probably one of the biggest questions that human beings have. And I'll say one thing is that one of the ways you discover very difficult things is that you never let up on searching. Because when our minds are incessantly searching for something, then we eventually come to it, and quicker than you think. But when we give up and we say, well, what am I searching for? Right? No one knows what. No one knows. How can you know that that's really your meaning? Right? I don't want to get too caught up in this, but I feel like I have to say this also. You know how we know that it is our meaning? You know how I know I can say that I was meant to be here right now teaching? Right? I say that with absolute confidence. I don't have any doubt about that. Right? I know that. You know you know why I know that? I know that because I know that. And I know that you're not used to knowing things that way. Right? You show it to me in a book. Prove it to me. Show me 3 other people that know that. Right? And I'm saying that the most powerful way of knowing is when you know so deeply that you don't need anything else to tell you. You don't need outside verification. You know it. That's when you know. And when our minds are persistent to know that I was put here with a divine purpose, and that will give me my deepest meaning, and I will not let up in just looking at the cues that God sends me through my life and through what my talents are and my gifts are and the opportunities he sends me and the people I get to know. All of this is God speaking. All this is God speaking. Then we get to know. And when we know, we know. And how do we know? We know because we know. And some people will laugh at you, right? And say, hey, that's not a way to know. And you know what? When you know that deeply, the whole world can be laughing at you. And guess what? You still know. Faith rather than? It is faith in the objective. You see, it's faith in the objective. Yes. Yeah. Wow. Man, I'm going to need 3 years for that one. It's a great question, and that's our biggest obstacle, and you're 100% right. That's our biggest obstacle. But what I'm going to tell you tonight is that the ego is going to be your biggest obstacle to search for the objective meaning. That's it. So if you want to deal with the ego, deal with it in that way tonight. Tonight, the ego is the one who's going to tell you what you think you can figure out your real divine purpose, right? And it's going to push us away from that. Okay, let's go to text number 5. Text number 5. This is a deep writing from Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs, who many of us know. He was a former, of blessed memory, a great rabbi, former chief rabbi of Britain. And he writes, where do you find the answer to our objective purpose and meaning? And this is a little bit philosophical. I just warn you. Text number 5.
Think about it. Every function that once was performed by religion can now be done by something else. In other words, if you want to explain the world, you don't need Genesis. You have science. If you want to control the world, you don't need prayer. You have technology. If you want to prosper, you don't necessarily need God's blessing. You have the global economy. You want to control power, and you no longer need prophets. You have liberal democracy and elections. If you're ill, you don't need a priest. You can go to a doctor. If you feel guilty, you don't have to confess. You can go to a psychotherapist instead. If you're depressed, you don't need faith. You can take a pill. If you still need salvation, you can go to today's cathedrals, the shopping centers of Britain, or as one American writer calls them, weapon of mass consumption. Religion seems superfluous, redundant, de trop. Why then does it survive? My answer is simple. Religion survives because it answers 3 questions that every reflective person must ask. Who am I? Why am I here? How then shall I live?
Okay. So the reason why we need to go to religion is, and by the way, I really don't like the word religion actually, but I would say the reason why we need to go to God is because it answers these 3 questions. Who am I? Why am I here? And how then shall I live? Right? Science doesn't deal with these questions. Science wasn't designed to deal with these questions, and therefore they don't answer these questions. But God, the creator of everything, actually answers these questions. If you look on the screen, what do I find meaningful? That question is a selfish question. I'm not saying that as a dirty word, it's selfish like it's bad. I'm just saying it's a self-oriented question. I am here in this world. How do I find meaning? You see, a lot of the great secrets to discovering direction in life is asking the right questions. Okay, so instead of asking what do I find meaningful, we ask what is my purpose? Not what do I find meaningful. That's like we're sabotaging the meaning, the discovery of meaning by directly trying to find meaning, right? Which is seeking fulfillment for me, right? Instead of that, we're asking, what is my purpose? What is my purpose? Why am I here? Why was I put here? And the irony is that in answering that question, what's the byproduct? Meaning. That's the byproduct. And that's what we're looking for. But it doesn't come directly. It always comes indirectly. That's the key. That's why there are some things that may not feel meaningful. But when it's our purpose, it gives it meaning. It becomes meaningful. By the very fact that it's my purpose, it becomes meaningful. And there's nothing more meaningful than that. So sometimes and very often it's very unclear. For example, right? Let's talk about money, right? We can ask ourselves, we all have money, right? We all have money. Thank God. We all have a lot more money than our great grandparents had, right? Or ever fathomed they could possibly have, right? So what should I do with it? That's a question to ask. What should I do with it? I don't think it's the best question to ask, but it's one way of asking, of dealing with my money. What should I do with it, right? That's a question which is more self-oriented, like what should I do with it? But there's another question we can ask, and that is, why do I have it? Why do I have it? Right? Why was it given to me? And I'm not talking given to me through the transaction with the business deal I made, but why was it endowed to me? For what purpose? And when we can answer that question on some level, it doesn't have to be on the perfect level, but on some level, and then live that out, how do we feel? Deeply meaningful. And that's not transient meaning. That's a long-term, lifelong, eternal meaning. Lifelong, eternal meaning. I'm remembering now because I studied in Miami Beach for 2 years. So that's in my resume, by the way. I just want you to know I was in Miami Beach for 2 years. I don't know if that's impressive or not. But I just remember 33139, right? No one knows that. When I was after I finished rabbinical my fourth year of rabbinical college, they sent our class on stints throughout the world into different yeshivas, and my group was sent to Miami Beach, and we studied in a yeshiva called it was called the Landau Yeshiva, because a man by the name of Mel Landau, who was a very wealthy man, gave a tremendous amount of money to buy this building. Okay, so it's called the Landau Yeshiva. And after he had given that money, he actually had a big collapse in his business and he lost all of his money. And he would say, and he told many people, and people saw him do this, he would drive to the yeshiva, he would sit out there and look at the building for a few minutes every day. He said, I lost all my money, but this I'll never lose, right? You can't get deeper meaning than that. That's profound, right? Now, I'm not saying it has to be in that shape, in that format, and surely we're all not, I would suppose that most, if not all of us, don't have the money that Mel Landau had, whatever he had, which I have no idea, right? To buy school buildings. But the point, though, is it can be on a small scale, big scale, in many different fashions and ways, but that is meaning. That is meaning, because he knows why. He answered the question of why do I have this? He didn't answer the question of what should I do with it? There are plenty of things to do with it, right? And there's another fascinating thing is that when we ask questions this way, and we focus our lives not on how I can do something that's meaningful, but what is my purpose, right? We build a solid, ironclad self-esteem. To all of the therapists in the room, listen to this one, which you probably know, but maybe you're hearing it in different words now. Because what we're doing is we are no longer basing anything on performance. It has nothing to do with how well I am performing. Because I tell people all the time, beginning with myself, you can only perform as good as you can perform. You will never perform better than that. Right? Never perform better than that. So no reason to go on stage with pressure that I need to perform better than. You can only perform as you are, right? With everything that God gave you. So I show up and say, God, I'm going to be everything that I was able to bring out from within myself up to this point that you've endowed within me. And God, if you want to empower me while I'm up there, please, right? There's a passage that we say sometimes, that I say sometimes before I speak. If it's it's a passage we say right before we start the Amidah. We say, Hashem, Sefasai Tiftach, open up my lips and my mouth will sing your praise. Meaning, God, I'm going to try and be a conduit for you. I'm going to try and stay out of the way, which means not being self-conscious, not being nervous, not being caught up in how I perform. I'm just here for you, God. Let the ideas flow. And I will tell you that I know that when I stand up here, I don't know exactly what I'm going to say. I have the ideas, I have my notes, right? But I'm not reading, right? And things are flowing through me. And a lot of that has to do with how much I am letting go of my ego and letting God flow through me, right? And when we operate that way, we don't have insecurities because I'm not competing with anybody. I'm just, so to speak, competing with myself. I'm just trying to be the fullest conduit that I can be. There was a rabbi, there is a rabbi, a great rabbi. I think he's the head of yeshiva in Los Angeles. Just leave it like that. Won't get into his age, but he's an older rabbi, a brilliant scholar, head of a yeshiva, fantastic character. And when he was a yeshiva student, he wrote a letter to the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And he said that, I know that there are these great Torah scholars who were prodigies. They were born, prodigies, brilliant minds. And, they studied and they became somebody significant amongst the Jewish people. And I just feel I'm here learning in yeshiva. And this man has a great mind. Prodigy, I guess, is all relative, right? So he was comparing himself to the elite of the elite, right? But he said, I feel like I'm never going to become that anyway. So why am I studying in yeshiva? So the Rebbe responded to him in surprising fashion. Like the Rebbe responded to him with surprise, which the Rebbe would often do in letters in order to wake someone up. He would say, I don't understand. The reason why someone in yeshiva studies Torah is because Ani Nivresi L'Shamish Eskoni. I was created to serve my maker. What does it have? What's the difference? What scholarship anyone has? Like, what are you comparing yourself to? Who are you comparing? What's the whole purpose of that? There's absolutely no purpose in that. And then the Rebbe said, for some people, the way they serve God is by giving charity. And for other people, the way they serve God is by being Torah scholars. Depends on, the way God endowed the person. Everyone's very different. Just be you. That's all the Rebbe was saying, right? No insecurities. Just be you. It's a very, very profound guidance. I'll share another story where we're a little bit short on time, but I want to get this in. Maybe you'll indulge me for an extra few minutes tonight. But there was a follower, we call him a chassid, a follower of the first Chabad Rebbe, Reb Shner Zalman of Liadi, who wrote the book Tanya. Some of you have studied the book Tanya. It's an unbelievably profound spiritual book. And this follower was a very successful businessman, did very well and did beautiful things with his money, supported many people and helped many people, etc. And his business collapsed and he lost everything. He had 2 daughters that were of marriageable age, which he didn't have money now to marry. He had debts which he couldn't pay off, and he felt that it was a desecration of God's name that a Jew like him, a Hasidic Jew, would leave debts and not pay them off. And he also promised other people to help them with different things, which he could not help them. So he came to the Alter Rebbe, his Rebbe, and asked him for a blessing. And he was crying to him. He was like in a real pain. God forbid someone lose their entire business. It's terrifying. So he was crying to him that he's in this predicament. So Rebbe spoke to him for a few minutes. And then the Rebbe told him The Rebbe went into thought for a minute, and then he said, which is the end of text 7, you speak of what you need, but you say nothing about why you are needed. That's what the Rebbe told him. In English, the Rebbe was a holy man. But I'm just going to say this so you can relate to this. In English, we call this real deep coaching. The Alter Rebbe told him exactly what the Alter Rebbe knew he needs to hear and is ready to hear. And he said, you're sitting here and telling me about what you need, and you haven't said a word about what you are needed for. What was Alter Rebbe telling him? You're talking about meaning, and you're not talking about purpose. And if you want to have meaning, you need to first discuss purpose. That's really what Alter Rebbe was saying. Now, this is what I told you in the beginning of the class. The challenge of this course is not so much to understand the ideas. Ideas I don't think are too deep, but it's to actually absorb the ideas. When you absorb an idea, it has transformation. This man was a very profound man. He was a big scholar as well. You know what happened when he heard those words? Anyone know? He collapsed on the floor in a faint. That's called taking words to heart. Yeah. And then when he was awakened from his faint, he spent the next few weeks in the synagogue of the Alter Rebbe, studying Torah, serving God, and forgetting about business just for a few weeks, so that he reorients himself in understanding I was put here by God, and I have a mission, and that's my purpose. And then before he left, the Alter Rebbe gave him a blessing, and his business flourished again, and everything straightened itself out. But all of this brings out the exact same idea. What can life give me versus what am I here to give? That's the difference between the two. So Mark Twain once said, you may have heard this famous quote, the two most important days in your life are the day you were born and the day you find out why. It's a very profound statement. And this is exactly what we're talking about. He was an intelligent man, Mark Twain. These are the two most important days in our life. And the question is, how do we find out? Right? Everyone, we got that question a few times. So how do we find out? So we're going to begin by talking in a general sense. Okay, in a very general sense, the way we find out is by climbing out of ourselves. Okay, we have to go beyond our own system to the entity that is outside of us who designed us. If you want to know how to fix your computer, you have to go to the one who made the computer, not the computer itself, right? To the designer of the computer. Let's watch this video.
Hey, cow, what's the meaning of life?
Here, have some.
Thanks. I'll pass. Parrot, what's the meaning of life?
What's the meaning of life? Oh.
Yeah, that's not helping. Lion, what's the meaning of life?
Life has meaning.
Noted. Moving along. What's that circle?
Take a guess.
A sun? That's it?
Wrong.
Maybe a person?
Nope.
I know, a balloon.
Nice, but no.
If it's not a sun, a head, or a balloon, maybe it doesn't mean anything.
It does, but it's in my mind. I made it for a purpose. You just have to ask me.
Okay, I give up. What is it?
A cake.
A cake?
You kept guessing the circle's meaning. Your answers were clever, but not what I intended. Life is the same. To know the truth, You must ask the one who made it.
That really sums up, what we were discussing, and that is that we can attribute any meaning to anything, right? The question is, what is the meaning of the person who designed it? That's really what we want to know. And so, how do we know what our meaning is, what the meaning of the purpose, what our purpose is, what the purpose of anything actually is? So, I'm going to say it this way, okay? We open up the I tried to coin this before class and I got distracted. What's that thick 12-step book called? It's called the Big Book. Okay, great. It's called the Big Book. So in order to know the purpose of our life, of our existence, of anything, we have to open up the big instruction book. You know what the big instruction book is? The Torah. Because the word Torah actually means instruction. That's what the word Torah means. Okay? You have to open up the big instruction book written by Almighty God himself. Now, when did God write the instruction book? It's very important to understand. When did God write the instruction book? If you go to text number 9, whoever's got the mic, read text number 9 for us.
The Torah's existence precedes the world by 2,000 years.
Okay. Now, I want you to know something. That's not 100% accurate. Isn't that a chutzpah of me? But let me explain what I mean. When is time a creation? It is. There was a point when there was no time. And we cannot fathom that because we only understand reality with the framework of time and the framework of space. And I'm not going down this rabbit hole now. I just want to make one point. When the Midrash tells us that the Torah preceded the world by 2,000 years, it doesn't mean that in time measurement, because there was no time before there was a world. It means to say that the Torah preceded the world way before there was any concept of a world. There was the Torah. Purpose exists before creation. Creation follows purpose. If you build a house without blueprints, I'd hate to see what that house is going to look like. You have the blueprints, and then you have the creation. So you were created, and I was created after the design was already set. There is a purpose for every single one of us. And when we align ourselves with that purpose, we have deep and profound meaning in our life. And that's why our quest for the ultimate meaning leads us to the Torah. And I want to tell you this. I just want to tell you this, and just in case, okay? This is not an agenda here. This is not an agenda to get you to the Torah. It really isn't, right? This is just the way it is. It just happens to be the way it is. If it was differently, I would say it differently. It's not differently. It is the way it is, right? So we have to, and I know we heard the word Torah a lot of times,